Hi everyone, my name is Andrea Matoni. I'm part of small group 8. We're going to be working on chapters and discussing chapters 12 and 13 for our ELE presentation. I'm going to start off with an introduction of myself and then pass it around to the rest of my group members. Like I said, my name is Andrea Matoni. I went to Bowling Green State University for my undergrad. I received a Bachelor's of Arts degree in communication with a minor in marketing. I am currently going back to school for my MBA as well as working full-time as an administrative assistant for the director of nursing at a pain clinic out in Toledo, Ohio.
Hi everyone, my name is Christina Gordon. I received my undergrad at Bowling Green and now I'm working on my MBA. I also work full-time as a senior account manager for a health management company.
Hello, my name is Carrie Henseroth. I am a graduate of Bowling Green State University, where I studied visual communication technology. I am currently in the Business Administration Master's online program, and I work at Metro Health in Cleveland, Ohio.
Hi, I'm Griot O'Brien. I got my undergrad from St. Leo University in Criminal Justice. Now I'm pursuing a master's degree in Health Services Administration. I'm currently an employee at Materion.
Hi, my name is Nick Harvey, and I received my undergraduate in management from Bowling Green State University. I am currently in my first semester of my MBA program, and I'm a quality engineer at Cooper Tire and Rubber.
The purpose of the experiential learning exercise is, as a group, we want to enhance your knowledge of power and communication and how they work to achieve an overall goal.
So quickly, I'm going to go over the outline of our presentation for chapters 12 and 13. First, we're going to start off by talking about power and interpersonal power versus structural power. Then we're going to move to empowerment, the communication process and nonverbal communication, effective communication and the breakdowns of it. And then lastly, we will wrap up with improving communication in an organization. So in my section, I'm going to start with interpersonal power, leading to the 5 bases of power. So being that I did have a communication degree, this section kind of hits home for me. So we're going to start off with legitimate power, reward power, coercive power, expert power, and referent power. These are 5 powers that really tie into the company and how it runs. So we're going to go a little bit more in depth on these 5 bases of power. So your first one being legitimate power. This is going to be the ability to influence others because of the position within the organization. So this power is given by the organization itself. So this is a lot of the times your managers, your supervisors, your presidents. So they have that power for a reason. It's legitimate. They've earned that power, I guess, in a sense. The second one is reward power. So this is the ability to reward someone for being compliant. So someone possesses that resource that another wants and will provide with a certain behavior in return. So in this sense, if your manager needs you to do something, you have the ability to do it, you have the resource to do it. Sometimes in order for your manager to really show you how important it is, they might provide you with an award such as paid time off, vacations, a pay raise, things like that. Your third one is going to be coercive power. So this is the one that can be a little bit scary in a sense. So this is the one that you it's to punish, or you are operating out of fear. So this a lot of the times is, I think a lot of us in this world have had a manager like this who you're doing something and you know they're coming, so you do it even better and you make sure that you're doing work and you're not messing around or you're not going slower. So you kind of comply out of fear in order to do your position and not get, yelled at, punished, put in a position that you don't want to be put in. The fourth one is expert power. So this one I always kind of relate to an IT department. Not that I'm not tech savvy, but so the expert power, they possess a specific value. They're able to do a specific thing. So they have a need or value that someone else might not have. So this, in a sense, is always going to be someone who has that resource. So expert power, people that go to school for IT or have that intelligence of an IT department, I always use this as an example, is the fact that they can provide the necessity that we might need. So that's how they earn that power, is they have the knowledge of it. The last one is referent power. So this is the one that I closely relate to. Every time that I've been in a quote-unquote leadership situation, it's because people kind of feed off of my charisma or my personality. They like how I run things. They like, I'm honest, I'm truthful, I'm very open. So a lot of the times I do relate to this one. So this is a characteristic that a person has that gives them that power. So it just kind of collectively comes together as a group. It's kind of never really said if they have it or not. So I really think that this is one that I relate to. In the questions that you will have to answer, this will be one of them that you'll answer, is what one do you relate to? So I'm just pointing out why I relate to this one for you. So next we're going to move on to structural power. So this is that the control mechanisms by which the organization is governed. So the decision making comes from multiple places in the organization. So the last company that I worked for really operated very, very well under a structural power setting, and I'll give some more examples. So structural power has 3 steps. We've got resources, decision-making power, and information power. So your resources are just going to be that the power stems from the access of resources, information, and support. Decision-making power, the degree in which the individual or subunits can effectively make decisions. And then information power, knowledge is considered to be equal or more powerful. So my example here is the company I used to work for. I came in knowing nothing about what they did. They did ergonomic seating. And so I had to really dig for not only the information, but my resources. So I had to use the people around me. I had to gain that information from them. So really, really highly related to the structural power. On top of that, all of our managers there worked really, really well together. They were able to come to decision making. They didn't really let emotions get in the way. There was frustrations, but they were really, really good and effective at making that final decision.
Now, in these next few slides, we're going to be talking a little bit about empowerment. What is empowerment? Why is it not universally embraced? And, ways that you can increase your effectiveness in empowering others. So when we talk about what empowerment is, it's sharing power and authority with subordinates, with employees, to increase their confidence and effectiveness in the organization. So being empowered means feeling control of your work and knowing you're trusted to make decisions about your responsibilities. The idea behind empowerment is if you have that trust and open communication with your manager, then you don't have to go to them for every little thing, for every question. You can make organizational decisions or department decisions on your own. You don't have to go through layers and hopefully go through layers and layers of people to get what you need. Now, some individuals may feel like the feeling of they like the feeling of empowerment, and some may not. Some people may not be ready. Maybe, they're new to the job, or they just don't have enough training or mentoring. Think about yourself in your current work situation. Would you like the feeling of empowerment? Do you think it would work in your organization? Would you like your manager to give you authority to make your own decisions? Some examples of, one example of a company that comes to mind is Zappos, where they give their customer service reps the ability to make decisions. So they're not saying, oh, hold on, let me talk to my manager and see if I can, correct this issue, see what we can do for you. When they're on the phone, the purpose is that customer service rep they have enough trust in that person that they can help that person on the other line quickly. Now, some of you may think, of course, I would want empowerment, but empowerment is actually not universally embraced for a number of reasons. Some reasons that empowerment is not a universally accepted practice within all organizations is because managers feel the loss of power, they feel the loss of control or authority, and they don't like that feeling. Employees are not able to make responsible decisions. Empowering employees has been attempted before in other organizations. There's been research, and they've failed. Sharing proprietary information, it means leaking ideas and plans within the organization. And not everybody wants to be empowered. My last slide is going to go over ways in which you can empower others at work. The first way is going to be to delegate authority. When you delegate responsibility, you make certain you're also delegating authority to go along with it. You're going to be a partner. Instead of, being that manager role, it's really going to turn into that partner role where you're working together now. Number 3, be supportive. Assure your employees that they're doing okay, and if they make a mistake, that it's going to be okay. They're going to have plenty of other opportunities. Number 4 is going to be share information. Your employees are going to need to see the big picture, so they're going to need to have information that you may not have shared with them before. Number 5, provide training opportunities. Encourage your employees to develop skills to perform these new job roles. And lastly, providing constructive and constant performance feedback so that they know what's going on. They know areas where they're doing well at. Maybe they need to know areas that they're also improving in. In the next few slides, speaking of communication, Carrie's going to be taking you through the communication process.
Communication process. Today, there is a widely used and accepted model for communication that has been created mainly from the works and theories of Shannon, Weaver, and Schramm. As you can see from the slide, this model begins with the communicator, to encoding the message, the medium, decoding the message, to the receiver, and finally, the feedback. Let's take this presentation as an example. I am the communicator with the intention of delivering you, the receiver and audience, a message about communication. I do my research by utilizing our textbook and ultimately encoding the data or specific information that I want to share with you. After encoding, I develop my message to emphasize the information that I want you to know. The medium is how I wish to deliver this message. In this case, it is a combination of a PowerPoint presentation and a verbal explanation. Decoding is a process that you, the receiver, go through to interpret the message and ultimately decode what you believe the message is I am trying to convey. This can be based upon your previous experiences and your frames of reference. Your interpretation of this presentation may not be the exact same as our other classmates based on this decoding process. Each individual has their own frame of reference. Feedback from the receiver to the communicator is important because it allows the communicator to know that their original intended message was received. If the original message was not received as intended, the communicator can then make adjustments for the next time based upon the feedback from the receiver. If there is no feedback given, this creates a one-way string of communication, and can end up in miscommunication and misunderstandings. Noise is a big part of the factors that can distort the original intended message. A great example of this is the childhood game of telephone, where you start with one message at the beginning of the train, but it gets distorted as it moves along and ends up completely different with the final person. There are many different kinds of noise, from being interrupted to being in a rush and not fully paying attention. This now brings me to another factor in communication and noise: nonverbal communication. Nonverbal communication. Nonverbal communication is made up of physical cues. Some examples of these physical cues can be the slight turn of your head, your facial expressions, the rolling of your eyes, your posture, if you're slouching or standing up straight, your hand gestures, if you're waving your arms around frantically or they're stiff as a board at your side, the tone of your voice, if you're trying to give positive feedback but yet sound angry or sad. Even your choice in clothing can sometimes create a mixed message. Nonverbal communication can be uncontrollable, spontaneous, and a subconscious expression of emotion. Or it can be deliberate and meaningful to emphasize your point. This ultimately creates potential noise with the receiver and can make it more difficult for the communicator to get the intended message across. These nonverbal cues can generate multiple interpretations based on the perception of the audience. For example, a smile may not come across as happy, but could be taken as fear or anger if you subconsciously grit your teeth. Facial expressions can convey a type of emotion, where your physical cues can determine the intensity of emotion. For example, how close you get to an individual can show the seriousness of the message you're trying to convey. On the other hand, a smirk can come across as lighthearted or not being serious. These subtle cues can deliver more of a message to the receiver than what was originally intended. And when the verbal message conflicts with the nonverbal cues, the receiver tends to take more value and weight in the nonverbal cues. As leaders, we need to be aware of our possible nonverbal cues to make sure the messages we are trying to get across are received in the manner in which we intended. If it is taken in the wrong context because of the nonverbal cues, it can cause unintended issues or miscommunication. Nonverbal communication can therefore be considered just as important as the verbal message itself.
Effective communication is powerful in any organization, and ineffective communication can be a huge detriment. Barriers to effective communication can exist in both organizational and interpersonal communications. First is frame of reference. Frame of reference has to do with the breakdown of information. Although the communicator may be speaking the same language as the receiver, the message is conflicted by the way the receiver catalogs the world around them. If a large area shares no common experiences, communication becomes impossible or at best highly distorted. Frame of reference can vary among people based on organizational experience and standing. Therefore, needs, values, and expectations can differ, causing unintentional distortion of communication. This doesn't necessarily mean that any particular party is wrong per se. It means that people will choose part of their own experiences and correlate it with their current situation, therefore causing them to see things from a different perspective. Next is selective listening. Most people only spend approximately 30 to 40% of their time listening. 4 phases of listening are perception, interpretation, evaluation, and action. Selective listening is a form of selective perception in which we tend to block out information, especially if it conflicts with what we believe. Value judgments are judgments made by the receiver of the information. It has to do with assigning an overall worth to a message before receiving the entire communication. It may be based on the receiver's evaluation of the communicator or previous experiences with the communicator or the message's anticipated meaning. An example of this is a manager not paying too much attention to the complaints of a certain employee who is known to whine a lot. Next is source credibility. This refers to the trust, confidence, and faith that the receiver has in the words and actions of the communicator. The level of credibility a receiver assigns to a communicator directly affects how the receiver reacts to the words, ideas, and actions of the communicator. How subordinates view communication from their manager is directly affected by how much credibility the subordinates may have assigned to the manager, which also has a lot to do with their past interactions with their manager. Filtering occurs often in upward communication. It's the manipulation of information so that the receiver perceives it as positive. This can occur when subordinates cover up or water down the unfavorable parts of information meant to be passed on to their managers. This is often practiced to avoid criticism or negative repercussions. In-group language is a lingo or jargon only group members understand, which is often designed to create a sense of belonging and camaraderie amongst group members. This can serve as effective communication within a group. An example of this would be the different terms they use to describe items at coffee shops. Although this is often positive, this becomes a communication barrier when members outside the group need to communicate. Next is status differences. This has to do with the rank or hierarchy within an organization. Status differences can be perceived as a threat by individuals lower in hierarchy and can therefore distort communication. Next is time pressures. Sometimes managers don't have time to communicate with everyone. This can lead to short-circuiting, which occurs when important parties who would normally be included have been left out of receiving information. Last is communication overload. This is described as receiving an influx of information that overshadow what's important. An example of this would be spam emails.
To improve communication in organizations, managers must do 2 things. The first thing they must do is improve their message. That's being the encoder. They have to transmit their information effectively. So a couple of techniques that managers can use are simplifying communication and ethical communication. Simplifying communication means not using jargon that maybe the people that they're talking to would not understand, and that also keeping your audience in mind when you're discussing something or when you're communicating with them. The other one is ethical communication, which is not being intentionally divisive or lying. The second is whatever they're communicating, they should not harm others with their communications. And the other one is the last part of ethical communication is people involved should be treated justly. And this is situational. It depends on what you guys are communicating as to whether it's just or not. The second way a manager can improve their communication within an organization is to improve their understanding. That's being the decoder. It's listening to what others are saying back to you from what you've communicated to them. One technique for that is empathy. It's putting yourself in others' shoes. This is going to help you understand how the person is going to feel about what you're communicating to them. It's actually putting yourself in their shoes and making sure that you understand what the ramifications of what you're communicating to them has. It's actually making sure that you understand exactly what you're saying and how it will affect the organization. The last 3 techniques I'm going to talk about that involve managers communicating within organizations, I believe will help the managers improve their message and also improve their understanding. Follow-up and repetition, I've kind of combined the two because they sort of go together. Repetition improves communication and understanding by reinforcing the initial communication, and allows you to clarify what you were trying to disseminate in the first time you discussed. This also will promote buy-in in whatever you're trying to talk about. This shows that you're interested in what you're talking about, and you weren't just out there communicating something that you don't believe in. By having follow-up and having repetition, you can follow up with your employees and let them know that you're actually paying attention to what they're doing, and you're actually paying attention to what you were communicating. It means something to you. So hopefully by repetition and by following up, you can show to them that you care, that you're on board, and you'd like them to get on board. And then face-to-face, communicating face-to-face allows you and the other person to see the nonverbals that are going on within the conversation. It makes it easier to know if they're understanding what you're saying, and or if they're not, if they're understanding or if they're not understanding, and you can really hone your communication or hone your what you're saying to them. This is a quick overview of the 6 techniques that I talked about today to improve your communication. There's follow-up, which is reinforcing the intended meaning of your discussion. There's face-to-face communication. There's empathy. There's putting yourself in others' shoes. There's repetition, repeating the important information. There's simplifying communication. This is speaking so others understand. It's not using jargon or other things that the person listening to you will not understand. And then there's ethical communication. It means being honest, being good-natured, and using just treatment. In Chapter 12, we discussed the different types of power there is within an organization and how power can be used. We also discussed why empowerment can be an important part of power. And in Chapter 13, we discussed what communication is, how to be more effective at it, and ways to improve communication in the workplace. We thank you for taking the time to watch our presentation. We hope you will do the quiz that we've attached to our submission, and there's also a couple of follow-up questions that will be on our submission also. Thank you very much, and have a great day.